Magandang araw, ako po si Sir Ariel, ang ALS lover ng Edtech Unit. Narito po ako para sa isang napakagandang balita at upang magpaalala na ang kinabukasan ay mas gaganda at uunlad kung ang lahat ay patuloy na mag-aaral. Sa edukasyon sa ating bansa, tiyak na walang maiiwanan sa pag-abot ng mga pangarap. Kaya naman ang Department of Education ICT's Educational Technology Unit at Alternative Learning System Task Force ay nagtutulungan sa pagkakaroon ng Edtech Empowerment Program upang maihatid ang excellent quality education sa ating mga ALS learner and teachers. To easily deliver the lessons from the modules and other references, we will provide tablet PC as part of the DepEd computerization program to all ALS teachers and orientation on the use of these packages. To deepen the pedagogical use of information and communications and technology in delivering instructions, there are training workshops on the use and curation of open educational resources or OER, Google and Microsoft productivity tools, creation of video lessons using PowerPoint presentations and KineMaster, and on ebook or e-magazine development. To create an avenue for remedial lessons that is open to all learners, teachers, and parents, we will have the ETUlay free online tutorial and mobile ETUlay, where we will visit remote schools to feature the best practices of our ALS teachers and learners. Sa mga out-of-school youth and adult, laging tatandaan na may pag-asa upang makapagpatuloy sa pag-aaral. May ALS para sa inyo. Ang edukasyon ay para sa lahat. Para sa bata, para sa bayan, para sa guro. Sulong Edukalidad.
Magandang araw, Sir Wilbur po, at your service. Narito ang ETUlay upang gabayan ka sa inyong pag-aaral upang lubos na maunawaan ang iba't ibang paksa o subject. Ang ETUlay ay isang free online tutorial class na pinangungunahan ng ICT's Educational Technology Unit sa pamumuno ni Undersecretary Elaine Del B. Pascua. Ang programang ito ay hindi lamang para sa mga bata, kundi ito rin ay magsisilbing gabay sa mga magulang at mga guro kung paano nila ituturo o gagabayan sa bawat asignatura ang kanilang mga anak o mga estudyante. Sa kasalukuyan, ang self-learning module mula sa rehiyon ng Calabarzon at kilala sa tawag na pivot ang ginagamit sa ating ETUlay online class. Kaya ano pang hinihintay ninyo? Ihanda na ang inyong mga ballpen o lapis, papel o kwaderno at samahan kaming itulay ang pagkatuto para sa bawat batang Pilipino. Sama-sama tayong magtutulungan para malampasan ang mga hamon sa panahong ito. Halina't matuto kasama ang inyong online tutor sa oras na ito.
Okay, so ayan, halina't matuto sa oras na ito sa ating isa na namang talakayan para sa ating online tutorial para sa Senior High School Practical Research 2. Muli, ito po ang inyong tutor Ronald. At sa hapong ito at sa linggong ito, tayo ay nasa week 8 na ng ating final quarter or quarter 4 ng ating school year, at ibig sabihin yan tayo ay nasa huling linggo na ng ating ETUlay online tutorial. At para sa linggong ito, meron pa rin po tayong tatalakayin sapagkat kasama pa rin po ito sa ating most essential learning competencies, at ito ay ang topic na guidelines in making recommendations, kasi ito rin ay isang mahalagang part ng ating research, no, na particularly yung chapter 5 ng ating research. At ang ating objective para sa ating session na ating try na ma-achieve ay ang formulates recommendations, no? So dahil nga recommendations about guidelines in writing recommendations ang ating paksa. So dapat lamang ang ating objective ay formulates recommendations, or paano nga ba natin isusulat or gagawin ang ating recommendations para sa ating research. Ayan. So, nung nakaraang linggo, tayo ay nagtalakay na ating paksa tungkol sa conclusions, no? Kung saan ito yung part bago ang ating recommendations. So, balikan natin panag-aralan by doing the first learning task, which is our review, short review of our discussion last week. So, simply lang, you just write yes if the sentence is a guideline in writing a conclusion, no if not. So, sentence lang po yan. If a sentence is a guideline in writing a conclusion, no if not. Ayan. So, number 1. So, kung gusto niyo pong mag-participate sa ating discussion, i-type nyo lang po sa ating comment box sa inyong sagot. Again, yes or no lang po. So, ang ating number 1, first sentence is, conclusion should be stated broadly and based on the researcher's beliefs. So, is sentence number 1 a guideline in writing a conclusion? Yes or no? So, type lang nyo lang po ang yes or no kung ang para sa inyong sagot. Again, kung yes kung ito ay guideline, or no if not. So, tingnan natin ang sagot sa number 1. Ayan. So, ang sagot ay no. So, hindi po siya guideline. Bakit? Ang sabi dito is conclusion should be stated broadly and based on the researcher's beliefs. So, hindi po dapat broad ang conclusion, no? As much as possible, it should be brief, concise and clear, and it should not be based on the researcher's belief. Rather, it should be based on the findings of the study or the research. Tama po ba? Ayan. So, no ang ating number 1. Number 2. Conclusion should be original and accurate. Conclusion should be original and accurate. Ano ba ang ating tamang sagot sa number 2? Is number 2 a guideline in writing a conclusion, or it is not? Ayan, meron na po tayong sumasagot sa ating Facebook. Ayan, sabi ni Isha Mendoza de la Luna, yes, ang kanyang sagot. At ang tamang sagot ay yes, no? Conclusion should be original and accurate. Number 3. Conclusion should not introduce new arguments, new ideas, or information not related to your research study. Again, conclusions should not introduce new arguments, new ideas, or information not related to your study. Ano nga bang ating tamang sagot? Sa number 3, is it a yes or a no? Is it a guideline in writing a conclusion, or it is not a guideline? So yes, Number 3 is a guideline. So, conclusion should not introduce no arguments, no ideas, or information not related to your research study. And besides, kaya nga conclusions kasi, di ba, conclusions end or katapusan na. So, hindi ka na dapat mag-introduce ng bagong ideas or information or arguments, no? Especially those that are not related to your study. Number 4. Conclusions should refer only to the subjects or populations of your study. Again, conclusions should refer only to the subjects or populations of your study. Is it a yes or a no? Is it a guideline in writing conclusion or not a guideline? Yes or no? Alright. Ang tamang sagot po ay yes. So, number 4 is a guideline in writing conclusion. And again, conclusion should refer only to the subjects or populations of your study. Siyempre, bakit ka pa maghahanap or magme-mention ng ibang subjects or populations ng study mo, no? Kumbaga, you're just making it complicated, ba? So, one guideline is in writing conclusion is conclusions refer only to the subjects or populations of your study. And let's have number 5, the last number. Conclusions should contain apologetic statements for unresolved problems in the study. Apologetic statements for unresolved problems in the study. Ang tamang sagot po sa number 5 ay no. So, conclusion should not contain apologetic statements for unresolved problems in your study. Marahil merong unresolved problems, pero you don't have to parang ask for apologies, no? Or write apologetic statements. Rather, you can recommend a certain action to resolve the problem that you were not able to resolve in your study, so do not use or include apologetic statements in your conclusions. All right. So those are our 5 sentences that contain the guideline in writing a conclusion. Well, 3 of them, but the 2 are not. But of course, we know how to make it correct. I mean, how to make it a guideline in writing conclusion. Okay. Now, let's proceed to our discussion for this afternoon. At again, ito ang ating topic, that is formulating recommendations. No? Formulating recommendations. Recommendations, is that part of your research which is based on the findings and conclusion of the study, so dapat ang recommendation mo ay base sa findings and conclusions ng study, okay, so that when you formulate your recommendations, it will be easy, it will be easy kasi nga the findings and conclusions have already been completed and fully explained, So, ito yung pinaka-last part ng ating chapter 5 or the last chapter, right after conclusions. Okay? Now, what are the characteristics of a good recommendation or characteristics of good recommendations? So here are the following characteristics that should be found in formulating recommendations for research. Now, one is relevance to the study. Okay, what do we mean by relevance? Relevance measures the degree to which a certain variable is related or useful to what is being asked or being talked about, no? So recommendations for things not discussed in the study is irrelevant. So dapat related or useful yung ating recommendations related sa ating study. Next, logical reasoning. Logical reasoning. The recommendation should be well thought of and with valid reasons. All right. If the findings, for example, is about um, too large class size, no, it is logical to recommend an ideal class size to create a healthy teaching and learning environment. For example, you study findings found out that large class size can significantly affect, no, healthy teaching and learning environment. So a logical recommendation or a recommendation with logical reasoning will recommend that an ideal class size, no, is necessary to create a healthy teaching and learning environment. So logical reasoning, there should be valid reasons and it should be well thought of. Feasibleness and attainability. Recommendations based on findings and conclusions should be practical, workable, and achievable, no, attainable, feasible, no. A recommendation pertaining to the need to improve and upgrade the science laboratory in public schools is feasible and attainable. So, do not include a recommendation that is not achievable, na hindi, parang imposibleng mangyari, imposibleng gawin, no? Of course that will be based on your findings kasi maraming ka namang pwedeng ma-recommend based on your findings, but then make it sure that your recommendation is attainable or feasible. Or in other words, practical, workable, and achievable. So those are the basic characteristics of good recommendation. No? Again, it should have relevance to the study, should have logical reasoning and feasibleness and attainability. I mean, the recommendation should be feasible and attainable. All right, and also there are purposes of recommendations. These are the reasons. No, in other words, these are the reasons why we have to write a recommendation. Why a recommendation is needed in a research? Why is it a must? Why is it important in a research study? One is policy recommendation. We recommend for policy recommendation. I mean, we write recommendations for policy recommendations. And when we say policy, Policy serves as a guideline in promulgating certain regulations in various sectors of a society. Okay? Um, and the recommended action should be specified. The steps required to implement the proposed actions and what resources needed and what resources are needed should also be included. Okay, wait lang ha. I'll just um, plug in my laptop. Medyo maglo-lowbat na. All right. Again, one of the reasons or one of the purposes of a recommendation is policy recommendation. So the recommended action should be specified, the steps required to implement the proposed actions, and what resources are needed should also be included in the policy recommendation. So we have examples here later, but when we're formulating policy recommendations, the following should be included. No? The discussion of the problem based on the findings and what should be done to solve the problem. No? Just like what was mentioned earlier, the problem should be discussed, no, based on the findings and the action to be done to solve the problem. Next, discussion of the benefits or advantages to the agency or organization, no, or group of individuals. Like for example, students, teachers, of course, agency. Depende kung anong agency ang pwedeng makinabang sa research ninyo, ano? So you discuss the benefits or advantages to the agency or organization. Also, in writing policy recommendation, you should also include the feasibility or viability of the proposed study. Kasi nga, one of the characteristics of your recommendation is that dapat meron kang the recommendation should be feasible and or viable. Okay? And number 4, the plan of action and the evaluation process to ensure success of the proposed policy recommendation. So, plan of action, of course, you have problem, what's the problem, and then ano yung plan of action na dapat gawin and how will it be evaluated, no? And again, yung isa pa, the resources needed to solve the problem, no? Dapat included yun sa iyong proposed policy recommendations. And here are the examples or sample policy recommendations. So first, on lack of teacher preparation. Lack of teacher preparation. Meaning the lack of skills and capacity building of teachers, lalo na yung mga bagong teachers, or lalo yung may mga bagong programa na pinalalabas ang DepEd. So sometimes teachers are not well prepared on these new programs, no, and projects of DepEd. So here's an example policy recommendation on that topic or problem. You could say teacher preparation and development programs should include development of pedagogical knowledge and competencies to handle the K to 12 program. So you have the problem teacher preparation and development programs, and then ano yung suggestion mo, recommendation mo, or plan of action. Inclusion of development of pedagogical knowledge and competencies, no, to handle the K to 12 program. So ano naman siya, feasible naman siya. It's a workable solution naman, no? So that's one example of our policy recommendation on lack of teacher preparation. Of course, our example is only one sentence. That's just the, let's say, the first sentence or the topic sentence, di ba? Because you still have other supporting details to that major or main or topic sentence. Next, another recommendation that you can use for a sample for a policy recommendation on heavier semester load of senior high school students this time. So your recommendations could be revisit the 80 hours per semester requirement for each subject in the senior high school curriculum. So you are giving a specific plan of action for the stakeholders, for concerned agencies or concerned organizations, no, to solve the problem on heavier semester load of senior high school. So again, you can say revisit the 80 hours per semester requirement for each subject in the senior high school curriculum. And again, this recommendation is based on the findings, no? Meron kang basihan. Bakit mo nasabing revisit the 80 hours? Hindi lang to base lang sa sarili mong belief, no? Or sarili mong paniniwala or opinion. Meron kang pinagbasihan, and syempre yun yung findings mo sa yung research. Another example, on the implementation of tech voc track of the senior high school. Probably you found out there's an issue or problem on the implementation. No? So you could say revisit the tech voc curriculum to prepare students for gainful employment in the industry. No? Revisit the tech voc curriculum to prepare for gainful employment in the industry. Siguro problem dito na nakita is merong mismatch sa tech voc curriculum dun sa pangangailangan sa industry, no? That's why students are not having a gainful employment in the industry. So, yun yung isang policy recommendation na maaring ibigay, no, about this particular issue or problem. Another example of policy recommendation, this time on lack of modules and other instructional materials. Parang ano to, very timely, no? Timely and relevant sa panahon ngayon. The sample policy recommendation on this particular issue or problem could be teachers should be encouraged to conduct research work and collaborate with other teachers in the preparation of modules, guides, and other instructional materials. And this is, I can attest to this, that this is really true. I mean, this recommendation is attainable because this has been done, when we were uh, making instructional materials and modules, no, or preparing the modules. We really did collaboration with other teachers, no, um, in making these modules and other instructional materials, whether it's printed material or digital materials, no. Hindi lang module, syempre meron din tayong other platforms na ginawa at ginagawa, para matugunan ang problema sa lack of modules and other instructional materials, like what we're doing now, the ETUlay online tutorial, no? So yan po ang ginagawa natin. So this is an example of policy recommendation on lack of modules and other instructional materials. All right, now what else do we have for the purposes of a recommendation? We also have recommendations for future research directions. No? Recommendations for future research directions. So you do not only recommend for policy guidelines, no? You can also recommend for future research directions, meaning you are giving a hint to other researchers, no? To other researchers who are interested in the same topic or the same issue, the same subject that you have. So, it's also ideal to present and discuss actions for offshoots of your research or further study of validation purposes. So, another reason why you are recommending for future research direction is to validate, no? To validate your study, your findings of your research study. Okay, and we have examples here, I believe. Some types of future research suggestions may be any of the following. 1. Addressing research limitations of your research study. Addressing research limitations of your research study. Now, example is you have a study conducted to determine the effects of cooperative learning on students' performance in English. Now, it was found out that cooperative learning can increase students' performance in English. However, the sample when compared to the whole population of the school was inadequate. No? Kung baga yun yung research limitation mo, yung sample size mo ay maliit lang compare sa whole population. Probably maliit lang siya kasi nga kulang kayo ng time or for some whatever reason. So, in your recommendation, no, you can recommend, no, to address that certain research limitation, no, your limitation about the sample size, no. So you can recommend that a larger sample is needed to determine if the same results will come out to produce better recommendations, to produce better findings, right? Another is examining other variables not included in your current research study. Because sometimes there are many variables that can affect your other variable, no? Your other variable in the study. And of course, in your research study, you cannot have all the variables, no? You cannot study. So you can recommend that other variables be included in your current research study. Baka magkaroon ng ibang resulta, or para malaman yung resulta kung parehas ko or magkaiba based dun sa variables na ginamit. Next, examining alternative interventions which merits serious study. This type of future research suggestion means that you want your research audience, or research recipients, I mean yung beneficiaries, no? Or future researchers of the same topic to examine alternative interventions, no? Which merits serious study. I mean, iba pang paraan to conduct this study. Perhaps different treatment of the data, or different research design, no? The number 4, more research on the effects and effectiveness of a similar program to younger or older age groups. So you may want to recommend on including younger or older age groups. This means your participants, no? Participants of your research. Maybe you included only the younger group on the effects and effectiveness of a similar program. Then in your recommendation, you can recommend to try the older age group for your sample. Okay? And then 5th type of future research suggestion is that similar studies which may be done on academic achievement on other subjects, no? Ibig sabihin, like kanina, cooperative learning on students' performance in English. Maybe you can recommend to make a similar study, but this time on math, no? Cooperative learning, effects of cooperative learning on the academic achievement, on the performance in mathematics, no? Or in science subjects. All right? So those are the 5 types of future research suggestions, no? Future research suggestions that you can include in your recommendations. Okay? Next. Of course, marami pang iba yan. You can also include research, or doing similar research in a different research context, no? Different research locale, diba? Or using a different research instrument. So that could also be a type of future research suggestion that you can include in your recommendation. Okay? Next. Here's the third purpose of a recommendation, and that is recommendations to some problems discovered in the research study. We have an example here. in the study on ito ginamit natin to last week, no, sa ating conclusion. Evaluation of mainstreaming special education or SPED for visually impaired. For visually impaired by DepEd. Results indicated that teachers are not majors of SPED and the facilities are inadequate to support the program. And your sample recommendations for that specific study with some problems discovered in your research study are the following. So one is hire qualified teachers to handle the program. No? Next, conduct regular trainings or workshops and other faculty development programs to improve the capability of current teachers. Kasi nga ang results ay again, one of the results dun sa study ay teachers are not majors of SPED. And then improve existing facilities, instructional materials, curriculum, teaching approaches, school management, and other support systems to improve effectiveness of mainstreaming SPED program of DepEd. So, this third recommendation is a suggestion to solve the problem on inadequate facilities to support the program, no, based on the findings, no, of that particular study. So that's how you give recommendations for to some problems discovered in your research study. Next, fourth purpose is recommendations for improvement or change. All right, for improvement or change. Example, the school should implement an effective and relevant reproductive health education program geared towards providing a formative curriculum that will significantly promote responsible adolescenthood in terms of reproductive health education, thus reducing the evidence of social problems such as abortion, unwanted pregnancies, and sexually transmitted diseases shall be appropriately addressed. So, the problem here or issue is about implementation of an effective and relevant reproductive health education program, no? So the recommendation for improvement or change, ano nga ba? Yun. The school should implement an effective and relevant reproductive health education program geared towards providing a formative curriculum that will significantly promote adolescenthood in terms of reproductive health education. So that's an example of our recommendations for improvement or change. And finally, the fifth purpose of a recommendation is recommendations for the continuous of a good practice. Siyempre, hindi lang naman problem ang pwede nating ma-discover sa ating research, no? Maaari din tayong maka-discover ng isang magandang practice, no? Ang sinasabing best practices, no? And that you can also recommend to continue, no? So kung merong dapat baguhin, no, at improve, meron ding dapat ipagpatuloy dahil sa ito ay nakabubuti para sa lahat. So you can also recommend that, of course, in your or include in your recommendation, no? Recommendation for the continuance of a good practice. Sorry, that's the fifth, no? Pang-lima na siyang purpose. I was able to change the number. So there you go, the five purposes of a recommendation of of a recommendation. And of course, we discussed earlier the characteristics of recommendations. The characteristics of recommendations, and we also had samples of policy recommendations and the types of future research suggestions. And before we end our session, as usual, ay muni muna tayo kung meron nga bang natutunan sa ating discussion, no? Let's try to have a generalization of what we have discussed, no, about guidelines in formulating recommendations. So take a look back and remember the things you learned in the past 40 minutes. So what are your realizations? And finally, if you are not yet done with your research, formulate a logical recommendation from the research findings and conclusions of your own research project for practical research 2 para sa inyong assessment for this particular session, no? ETUlay tutorial session. So, formulate a logical recommendation. So, maaaring ang iba sa inyo ay hindi pa tapos kasi nga na-late. Merong mga interruptions dahil sa bagyo, baha, whatsoever. So, maaari pa rin makatulong sa inyo ang ating discussion. Kasi ang iba naman kasi, ibang schools ay tapos na. No, just like sa school namin, tapos na kami last week ng research. Nag-present na sila, nag-defend. So, next week, graduation week na sa aming school. Pero sa ibang schools ay hindi pa. So, anyway, diyan po nagtatapos ang ating discussion. At muli, kung kayo ay interested sa reference na aking ginamit na sa mga nakaraang sessions, isa lamang po, of course, meron din ako mga online sources, but for the book, I used the book by Prieto and others, Practical Research 2 for Senior High School, published in 2017 by Lorimal Publishing Incorporated. And with that, I say thank you sa inyong lahat, sa mga sumubaybay at tumangkilik sa ating ETUlay tutorial sessions for 8 weeks for this school year. Maraming salamat sa teachers, students, parents, syempre sa lahat ng nasa likod ng ating ETUlay online tutorial, ang Educational Technology Unit, lahat po ng ating Educational Technology Specialists, from our directors, of course to our tutors, co-tutors. Maraming salamat. And salamat din po sa principal ng Haruan Central School, si Mr. Edgar Cativo, at sa pagpayag na ako ay gumamit ng kanyang isang opisina. Actually, nasa school clinic nila ako, kaya medyo tahimik dito. So marami pong salamat. Dito po natatapos ang ating ETUlay online tutorial para sa Practical Research 2, and tingnan natin kung magkita-kita pa tayo sa susunod na school year, no? Kung mapapatuloy pa ba ang ating ETUlay online tutorial, kasi hindi natin alam ang mga susunod na mangyayari sa ating, educational programs at sa ating mga educational, anong tawag nito, directions, no? Hindi natin alam dahil nga sa pandemic, walang kasiguraduhan. But what is for sure is DepEd will do whatever it takes para ang edukasyon ay magpatuloy kahit na tayo ay nasa gitna ng pandemic or anumang pagsubok, no? Sama-sama tayo magbabayanihan para sa edukasyon ng ating kabataan. Maraming salamat. Muli po ako po si Tutor Ronald. At sa ngayon ay live streaming na po ang Statistics and Probability ni Tutor Reverie. At antabayanan din po at ang iba pang subjects. At again, maraming salamat at magandang hapon sa ating lahat. God bless po.
A month ago, 15 public schools were chosen to receive Chromebooks for the National Pilot Program toward a new way of delivering classes via Google online tools. This have been made possible by the initiative of the Department of Education, facilitated by Q Software Research Corporation and supported by Google for Education. These 15 schools will receive these Chromebooks as the Information and Communications Technology Service, Educational Technology Unit, or ICTS Edtech, will have to deliver the unit this month of June 2021. The participation of these schools in delivering classes through Google's online tools is part of the National Pilot Program of the Edtech Unit. The program will include extended loaners of a fleet of Chromebooks, access to the Google services, along with tailored training for educators. These tools will support and empower teachers and administrators in order to facilitate more engaging classes, both remote, online, as well as face-to-face. This will surely help teachers enrich their day-to-day teaching tasks by introducing a new digital toolset and device. Through Chromebooks, schools may enjoy collaboration with these easy-to-use laptops to prepare students for the future with collaborative projects that deepen digital skills. It is with hope that the 15 schools chosen will show ingenuity in supporting their teachers and staff in maximizing the use of Chromebooks to complement conventional teaching and remote learning. Remember, our future success is directly proportional to our ability to understand, adopt, and integrate new knowledge in our works. Google for Education and DepEd believes in PDF. Passion, determination, and faith. And finally, Google for Education and DepEd Philippines successfully delivered all the Chromebooks to the 15 school recipients all over the Philippines. For Google for Education and DepEd believes that education is for all because it is always para sa bata, para sa guro, para sa bayan. Laging sulong edukalidad.